Is it on? Yeah. All right. Yeah, before we start, on the panel, I would like to ask who of you is working in a non-profit newsroom? Ah, yeah, maybe half of you. And whose newsrooms or organizations are based on a membership model or subscriptions? Less? Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so many of you want to learn more about membership models and possibly subscriptions. Those of you who were the guys with the membership model? I think I saw two hands or so. Yeah, how much of your budget is coming from this?
I wish I knew.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. More or less than 50% or? Okay.
Are you talking about my salary or the amount of revenue?
Sorry?
Are you talking about my salary or the revenue?
No, I mean the revenue.
I'm not 100% sure of the numbers, but I know it's enough to pay for a large chunk of our salaries.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we want to know more of you and yeah, get a lot of questions and ideas. But before we start with the audience, I would like to introduce our panel. I'm very happy to welcome you all here. Alon Aviram from the Bristol Cable is the Bristol Cable is a local news cooperative in the UK. Emily Goligoski, Senior Director of Audience Research at the Atlantic and former Director of the Membership Research of the Membership Puzzle Project in the United States, and Milagros Salazar, Director of Investigative Nonprofit Newsroom Convoca, Convoca, Peru, and also a member of ICIJ. And finally, Andrew. Oh, yeah, here. Andrew Ong, news editor at Malaysiakini. Is it pronounced correctly? Okay, you can say it. A subscription-based news website in Malaysia. Yeah, and I would like to start with a few introductions of your projects and your view on membership and the way you finance it. And yeah, I would suggest to start with Emily, and yeah, then go through, and yeah, 5 to 8 minutes each, I would suggest.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Emily. Hearing my new job title at The Atlantic is sort of a funny experience. I'm only a couple of weeks in, and most recently have been working at the Membership Puzzle Project with Jay Rosen and Ariel Zarolnik at New York University. And that project is essentially a think tank to study how news organizations might optimize for trust. Not for advertiser revenue, not for page views, but actually for earning and keeping the trust of your audience members. We saw a phenomenon as we studied about 250 news organizations around the world that have audience revenue as part or all of their business model, which is a real sea change and something that I think is fantastically exciting. You can see it represented in the circles just behind me, where many organizations historically have thought about the technical feasibility and the business viability of their organizations. They're now starting to adopt sort of a real fascination with audience desirability. And this represents a huge change that we have seen increasingly over the past 5 years of organizations, thinking about human-centered design, really considering, well, how is it that I might design a set of news products and experiences that really put my users' attention and my users' needs at the center? This is a pretty critical difference in the news industry, and something that I'm really excited about. It goes hand in hand with subscription, considering audience revenue and engagement as sort of two sides of the same coin, and the idea that you can't separate one from the other. I want to talk first about the differences between subscription and membership, because these terms are very often conflated. They're used interchangeably all the time. This is a pretty sophisticated group, and so I think I look to you to help model the distinction in these different ways of operating. We think of subscription as a transactional exchange, the regular delivery of well-defined value, as Ben Thompson from Stratechery says. This could look like, giving money to receive access to digital archives and a copy of a physical magazine in your mailbox each week or month. But the exchange sort of ends there. There is not the expectation of more on either side. And there is no value judgment in that. I now am working for a subscription-driven business. But where the membership puzzle project is particularly excited, and where we are seeing more and more interest from around the globe, is in membership that looks more like joining a cause and contributing time, energy, money, ideas, sources, access to networks, because you believe in the journalism. So it's a model that is a bit more robust. It can be more interactive and involve more ways in which individual journalists are listening to and collaborating with community members. Another way to think about this comes from the team at Steady and Kraut Reporter here in Germany. I sort of like this matrix, which also adds complicates the narrative a little bit by also thinking about donation. Just to get a show of hands, how many of your organizations accept online donations? Thank you. That's really helpful, because it's a good number of you who are sort of saying, if you want to support this work, help us do it, and a way to help us do it is with your money. One piece of guidance that I might offer is whether you are hosting donation, which is a philanthropic relationship with no expectation of return, membership, contributing to a cause because you believe in it, or subscription, a more transactional interaction, it's really important to be consistent in the language that you use, and to just set expectations with your supporters no matter the way that they choose to be involved. I think I've made that point plenty clear. And another way to go about thinking about revenue generation is to really consider, well, what is the right or what is the most appropriate fit based on your audience members' needs, and also the staff considerations, which I'll talk about in a couple of minutes, because any of this work is incredibly resource intensive. When you are asking for contributions, whether contributions of money or contributions of what your community members know, their professional expertise, their personal experience, that involves a lot of staffing resources and professionalism. Anyone who's done this work can tell you this is not something you turn on and off like a brand campaign. It really requires sort of ongoing resources and investment. And so I actually choose to start with talking about crowdfunding, which many of your organizations may have tried. It's an incredibly popular way to raise sort of a one-time infusion of capital. Many organizations that host crowdfunding campaigns will liken them to a sprint. It's sort of an all hands on deck, maybe 6-month lead up, and then 1 month of sort of intensive fundraising and attention gathering. This is not something that I would recommend that organizations undertake every year. It really is, I think, works best when it's done around a particular product or service launch. You're doing something new that you haven't done before, and you need the capital to help get you there. if you are more interested in sort of a annual or a monthly, sort of like a regular drum beat, subscription can be a great fit. I think it works really well when you know that there is a group of people in your region, in your country, or elsewhere around the world who believe in what you do and who want to put their support behind it. Subscription, I think a key component to get right here is the pricing. And there are a number of consultancies and firms that specialize in exactly this. How do I make sure I'm charging the right amount such that people, I make sure this isn't just an elite service, but also I can earn enough revenue such that I can actually turn the lights on in my newsroom and we can deepen our coverage. The thing that I would recommend around subscription, treat this as rigorously as you would any of your most serious investigative reporting. Really treat the pricing like a science. I have seen so many news entrepreneurs sort of run this back of the envelope math where they say, well, if people are willing to pay the equivalent of $10 a month for Spotify, I should just sort of tie my own subscription price to Spotify. That is completely devoid of any conversations with your audience members about their willingness to pay, what they see as the role that your organization provides. I don't pretend to have the answer for what you should charge, but you will get a lot of clues from going and being in active dialogue with those individuals. And I want to talk a little bit about places where membership is a great fit. My co-panelists can give you more thoughts on what this looks like in practice. I've been really inspired by seeing a number of organizations around the world that have chosen not to host a paywall, and that actually say a big part of being a member of our organization is that you underwrite the work so it can be freely available as a public service. This is News Laundry in India. And there are a number of other examples of organizations that say, actually, part of our mission is that we keep our work freely available. And I think it's an inspiring way to work. Again, go and be in dialogue with the people who are most likely to support you to find out how important this is to them. I want to share just quickly a few themes that I have heard over and over again in talking with donors, crowdfunding, campaign backers, subscribers, and members around the world. The first is we hear very high points of frustration with sort of chasing the news of the day. I've heard so many people say, I really feel like my attention is being batted around. It feels disrespectful. It doesn't help me actually follow a really complicated set of stories in a world that is increasingly perilous. And a few ways that I have seen organizations successfully respond to that are by being really transparent about what it is that they do, by maintaining discipline in the things they choose not to do, by saying, some of our competitors have this down pat. We will defer to them. We're not going to just pivot to video. They've got that. However, this is the type of investigative work that we will do and that only we can do uniquely well. I've seen a number of organizations that have devoted a real focus to their user experience, that they know the points of frustration that their readers have when they experience slow to load pages and sponsored content links that have nothing to do with the coverage that their readers are interacting with. This comes back to that idea of human desirability. How can your work put the users, the individual people who you serve with your work at the center? I've also been really inspired by seeing a number of organizations that are in such active dialogue with their community members that they really have studied why it is that individuals want to contribute. So they have a really deep insight into the motivations that these individuals have. It's not just, they want to support us because they believe in independent journalism. It's going several layers deeper than that. At a high level, and you can find more about this work on membershippuzzle.org, the motivations that we heard are desire in learning something new. That can be a new skill. So we've seen a number of organizations that offer everything from the opportunity for community members to serve as fact checkers, language translators, contributors of code, product testers, and much more. We have seen people who simply want their voices to be heard. And this is a place where I think membership and independent journalism are uniquely well paired, because there is no one better in the world than reporters and editors to be skeptical of the agenda that someone might bring. So actually, this is a great sort of proving ground, and I think a more democratic way of working. It's hard to overstate also the importance of transparency, of actually letting people in about how you do your work, as long as you are maintaining the safety and security of your staff. I want to share just one quick example from the Center for Investigative Reporting, Reveal, in Northern California. They have an active membership program as well as donation. So just quickly going back to what I was speaking about earlier, they appropriately signal what it is to be, a donor versus a member versus a contributor to one of their beat reporting projects, which I'll speak about now. Two of their reporters, Aaron Sankin and Will Carless, had a really active readership on their Hate Report weekly newsletter. And they started to say, there might be a way that we actually could put some of our most fervent readers' enthusiasm to work for our beat. And they put out a call, help us investigate hate. They were very specific about what would be involved. It would be things like filing Freedom of Information Act requests, listening to hours and hours of sort of right-wing radio and reporting back. They then verified and vetted the backgrounds of about 60 people across the US. They identified a project coordinator who really was sort of the point person between what these individual community members were gathering and reporting that sort of back up to the team that would later publish about it. This has become a real research multiplier for Reveal and for others who practice this kind of work. It's not for every organization, it's not for every beat, but I would just encourage you to ask, is there something that you and your team are working on that might be uniquely well paired with this kind of crowd research? And if you are going to involve community members' contributions, I really encourage you to sort of be very transparent in showing how it is that individual community members were involved in the reporting. There isn't yet a playbook for what this can look like at scale. So you will see here, there's one person listed on the byline, but actually there were hundreds of readers who contributed to this type of reporting. So the future of how it is that we present this type of work is sort of an exciting and an exciting frontier, I would say. And the promise that this work, I think, really offers is a break from a point of frustration that I have heard over and over again, which is, and these are visuals from Harkin, the community consultancy, in which reporters in the green involve community members in the purple line only at the point of publication, which, if you think about it, can be kind of an abusive relationship. I'm not going to let you in on anything that I'm doing until I come to you because I either want your money or I want you to distribute my work. If that were a one-on-one relationship that you had with someone, I think you would pretty quickly say, like, no thanks. So when we work in these more sort of public-powered and inclusive ways, we have the opportunity to learn much earlier what is it that our community members know that we don't, that might inform our reporting. The last example that I want to share here is from De Correspondent, the Dutch member-backed news organization, which is partners with the Membership Puzzle Project. Day Correspondent has recognized that there are a number of ways of working, sort of participatory forms of involving their members that are not one size fits all. And I think this is a really important thing to recognize, that by saying there are memberful ways of working does not mean that all of your community members are going to show up for your publication in the same way. And yet, there may be on-roads and paths to participation that look a bit different for everyone you want to involve. If this is of interest to you, please come find me here at GIJC. Some of the lessons that Day Correspondent has learned, as I mentioned, not every member does everything, nor would there be the capacity for every member to be involved in these really participatory ways. Every individual staff member on the editorial side has a different way of working. So for some people, it may be that an individual newsletter, weekly newsletter, is the most appropriate way to be in touch with their members. For others, it's actually casual live events, going and meeting community members where they're at. For others, it can be, it can be sort of more of an inbound ask. Please, in these specific ways, this is how to reach me, and let me know what I should be reading or what's on your radar that I should know about. Be really clear about the type of input that you want. A number of times reporters have come to me and said, okay, everything you said sounds well and good, but I'm about to be flooded with emails and I don't want to create more work for myself for potentially very little return. I would say this is a moment where you actually have a great opportunity to guide people in how they can almost self-filter information and bring it to you in ways that are useful. So I have seen places like ProPublica that have very clearly laid out sort of intake forms. If you have relevant information for an investigation that we're doing, here's the form to fill out to let us know about your experience, and we'll be in touch with you if this is something that we want to know more about. A little hand-holding goes a long way, is another way of saying that. Also, I'm really excited that we're starting to see this whole new range of job descriptions that did not exist 5 years ago. New jobs around editorial engagement, around membership direction that have, if we think of sort of a traditional newsroom business side paradigm, these are people who have one foot in each world. They have sort of bridge roles in ways that are, I think, really compelling. The last thing that I want to share with you is just a short list of some of the costs that your organization might think of, not only if you choose to pursue membership as a specific form of revenue, but if you want to foster a membership culture within your organization, even if you are a subscription or donation-based business. The reason that I share this with you is so that your team is thinking about the many, many costs involved in this type of work. It is, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, it is expensive to work in these ways. Any of these individuals will tell you more. There are many organizations in this room who can let you know sort of what their journey has looked like. I don't have an official graph, but I can tell you just anecdotally, in the organizations that I've studied, most in their first 3 years of hosting membership make less than 10% of their revenue from that particular form of audience involvement. I say all of this not to scare you, but to say membership isn't for everyone. It's very intensive, and it won't work in every context. Still, I think it represents a really unique step change that is more human-centered and more inclusive than the ways that our industry has worked in the past, and it couldn't come at a better moment or a time when it's more needed. So, thank you.
Thank you, Emily. So after this great overview, I would like to go into the examples and start with Alon, because I think as far as I know, the Bristol Cable, there are some examples in your work that fit very well to what Emily said. Oh, it's German, yeah. Von Beginn an. Let's try. Does it work? Yeah, no. Yeah. Okay. Okay. It works. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. So my name's Alon Aviram. I'm a co-founder of the Bristol Cable, which is a media cooperative. I'll talk briefly about how we try to build and retain membership, some of the challenges we're facing, and try and share some tips as well. But I'm not here to tell you. I'm not here to tell you that we have the answer to sustaining quality media. We are one of the many organizations trying to crack this nut, and it's only through information sharing and collaboration that we can all move forward. And that's why I think, for instance, what the membership puzzle has done, which is kind of to merge all of this learning into one resource, is so valuable for organizations that are interested in this sphere. So we're 5 years old, based in the mild west, as Banksy calls it, the graffiti artist, city of 500,000 people in England, and we have 2,000 paying members who make quality media in Bristol free for everyone in Bristol and beyond. We're a mixed revenue model, and so we have about 35% of our revenue comes from membership, and the rest is from grant income predominantly, apart from a few other minor revenue streams. We have a print copy. Please take a copy over there as well. I don't want to take any back in my bag. I feel like a traveling salesman or a Trotskyist. I'm not sure which when I carry papers. But and we have a website, of course. We have a small newsroom team of about 10 staff, and the majority of those people aren't working on media, we're wearing many different hats, part of the nature of being involved in a small startup. But yeah, we have positions, as we'll go into, that are specifically just about membership and membership engagement. So as well as doing the media side of things, we also do training and events, and we find that's a really useful strategy for building a community, especially if you serve a geographic area, a town or a city, as opposed to being an international platform or a national platform. It's that sort of physical engagement has been absolutely vital. And members engage on business and editorial decisions as well, whilst safeguarding our editorial independence. So we think about it in terms of like a funnel approach. So members can have a say on the general direction of the organization, whether it's at our annual meeting or at monthly membership meetings or online, participating in online forums. But then there's a team of staff who are mandated to do the day-to-day work, because although we're a cooperative and it's the organization is entirely democratically owned by each and every one of its members, no matter what they pay, we recognize that we need to be agile, and we can't rely on people to be involved in decision making, and that also assumes that people are interested in the first place in being involved in decision making, which one shouldn't assume, because people have got stuff to do. So yeah, I'll just move on. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with Aaron Pilhofer, but I thought this was a really good tweet that he tweeted not too long ago. If you're not following him on Twitter, then follow him. And it really gets to the heart of the conversations, I think, around membership at the moment, which is you can't. Can everyone see the tweet? Yeah. You can't dress up old models without genuine innovation and engagement. And I think a lot of people are perhaps approaching developing membership in media organizations kind of upside down. There needs to be a user-centered approach to creating media-led journalism organizations, and kind of assessing what value membership can serve your organization and what value, obviously, your organization can serve a potential membership. And there are many different ways of structuring a membership-led organization, as already was touched on. And and one of the things that is key to informing which direction you take is investing in membership research and audience research. And this is something that I wish we could say that we'd done right at the start, but we didn't. And that was partly just because we didn't really know what we were doing. And then kind of later into the game, we've started doing some more comprehensive surveys of our members in regards to what sort of relationship they want with the Bristol Cable. And that has been really useful, and we're going through a very intensive process at the moment in terms of understanding how we can work better as a team to serve our constituents. But one kind of caveat is, although it's good to do membership surveys, obviously you're only surveying your members, so there's, you know, the continuing challenge of reaching out to the people who aren't engaging with your product in the first place, which you know, speaks to the whole echo chamber issue. Another thing as well, which was really beneficial for us at the start, was doing the partnership work. Again, useful because we work on a city-based level, but creating networks. We created a board of advisors, non-executive directors, who we mapped out people from different communities across the city by profession, by geographic area in the city, and we used them as our ambassadors. And we also did a skills audit to understand what skills we did and didn't have in the organization, of which there were many, and whether it was people with legal backgrounds or accounting or youth workers, so on and so forth, brought those people to be kind of the advocates and the ambassadors of the product, of the membership service. So just, let's see if I don't know if, is this plug? Yeah, this is plugged to the internet, right? Any ideas? Yeah, never mind. I knew this would happen. So I was like, as I put the video into the slides, I thought to myself, well, that's stupid. But yeah, what I was going to show you was a 20-second video of a cheesy old English advert called by a varnish company called Ron Seal, the slogan from the varnish company is it does what it says on the tin, and that's become kind of a colloquialism in England, and it speaks to the to a point which I would like to make, which is that don't oversell what you're offering. And Emily kind of spoke about this earlier as well, is don't promise the earth. It won't do your retention rates or trust any good. It's much better to just be a bit more realistic about what you can offer. People aren't necessarily interested in transactional relationships. Again, this thing of, and that's something that we learned. I spoke about it yesterday, but we had a referral mechanism where people could, through like accruing points, be able to get products if they got people to join the Bristol Cable, and we just saw that it didn't really work, and people are much more inspired by joining up to a cause. So our main pitch is join to make quality journalism free for all, yeah, I think that's really important. Should I quickly wrap up? Yeah. So I'll speak a bit quicker, but still take my time. Yeah, trust and engagement are vital, but to what ends? Everyone's talking about trust in journalism, but something that we have to square is that there are plenty of newspapers and media organizations that have very low levels of trust, but have extremely high levels of engagement. So, it's this ever-present problem of how do you make public interest journalism of interest to the public, and how do you make yourselves indispensable to your users. And I think one of the ways in which you do that is by trying to understand them or us and having an ongoing conversation. It's not just one survey, it's not just one focus group, but it's a continued relationship. And this is something that the cable really needs to improve on, and we're looking to other organizations that have, whether it's Corrective in Germany or places further afield that are doing some very interesting communication with their audience. This is one example at the Cable, fairly recent, where we synced community engagement with our journalism. So one of our journalists, it was a very basic thing. We just through our newsletter appealed for people who had experiences of their children being sent into isolation when they misbehave. There are thousands of children every week in Bristol that are put into isolation booths when they misbehave, part of kind of a crumbling school system. And to get their experiences. So at first it was a data story that had been picked up from FOI material, and then before we knew it, we had dozens of parents, people working in schools who were like whistleblowers about it as well, speaking to us, and they brought that data story to life and made the story better. Yeah, I don't think I have much more to say on that. I would like to say that we have to, we've decided to bring people on different floors into one office space, but in our organization we have one office space, so it's de facto multidisciplinary. But yeah, that's something that, we're working a lot on processes in terms of how we can bring developers and membership and editorial together to serve our membership better. The last slide, stay fresh. One of the lessons that we've a hard lesson that we've had to learn at the Cable is that don't expect membership growth to continue organically and for it to be continuous. At the start, we had quite high levels by our standards of membership growth, and then it sort of it slowed down. So even if you have a good product, you need good comms, you need to be transparent, you need deep engagement and continued conversations with your members to facilitate sign up and retention. You need to invest in a membership team, community engagement, and don't be paralyzed by endless strategic planning. Learn by doing, brainstorm, test, learn, repeat. One of the things that we really have encountered and we're moving beyond is sort of paralysis, like a rabbit in the headlights, that we feel like we can't act until we have like the perfect strategy in place. And I think, if you're looking to other examples internationally, reading through Membership Puzzle or other places, you can get ideas from other organizations and start innovating on a local level and just see what catches. So thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, maybe just one question. You remembered the offline events, and that your members have a lot to decide in a cooperative. How much people get involved, and how can you say from the members so many do directly get involved, and how important is that for
in the events themselves?
Yeah.
Well, we have kind of a range of different events. So I mean, the most basic one is our annual general meeting, which is actually in a couple of weeks, where we'll have a couple of hundred people generally having a say on kind of wider strategic decisions. But then throughout the year, we try and liven it up, and we have. For instance, we had not too long ago an event which was about healthcare, and we invited members and the general public who had experience of healthcare from like professionally speaking. So we had like nurses, doctors, physiotherapists, whoever, and they fed into a session to inform what sort of stories we should be doing, because we wanted to just get some ideas for health reporting and build contacts and so on and so forth. And then we also run kind of themed sessions on particular issues. So if we have a problem, so if we did, for instance, a campaigning journalism series, and we had members come to a meeting, design ideas, brainstorm ideas for a particular campaigning series that the Bristol Cable could do. Then we took that, we refined those ideas, we chucked some of them straight into the bin, and we put it to a poll, which went to all of our members online, got them to vote on it, and then we got the contacts of members who were particularly interested or had experience of those issues to then assist our journalists in producing it. But there's a lot more that can be done. There's a lot more ways in which it can be refined, and we're working on some like digital tools to scale it up.
Yeah, but interesting that in a world of online publication offline
Totally.
events are.
It's
very
innovative to knock on someone's door these days. I tell you that. Like, and that has been like a massive benefit that we've got we've got an office in the city centre, and that's been really useful, opening the doors to people to be able to come in and chat to us.
How many members do you have?
Over 2,000.
Okay, but and a few hundred come to the annual.
To the annual one,
annual.
yeah. But then, the smaller one, it will be, like a couple of dozen, 30, 40 people. Depends on the event. Sometimes a few hundred if we have like a speaker.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so far. I would like to continue with Andrew to tell a bit also about audience engagement. Shall we put the computer?
Is this on?
Maybe you can. No? Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Hi, is this on? All right. I'm one of the editors at Malaysiakini.com. It's one of the first Southeast Asian news organization to adopt a subscription model. So it is 20 years old now. It started with 5 people, and now we are close to 100. And the subscription model came in before that. When Malaysiakini started, it was right after the Asian financial crisis. So there was turmoil in quite a number of Southeast Asian countries. And there's also a lack of press freedom in Southeast Asian countries. And 2 journalists decided to get together to set up an online news organization with the intention of providing proper journalism. And thankfully for us, it was an instant hit. And we were getting about 1 million page views a month because of the political news that we were churning out at the time, which was mostly censored in Malaysian newspapers and broadcasters. So in April 2004, when grant money was starting to dwindle, that was when my bosses decided to implement a paywall. And that's when the party stopped. And that's when the amount of page views dropped dramatically. So over the years, what we have done is we continued to provide that sort of journalism, which is mostly human rights, politics, and public policy issues, which were less covered by newspapers, broadcasters, and we held on to that model without changing much. And every 5 years, when we had an election cycle, our readership would double. It doesn't mean that our subscribers doubled, but definitely the traffic that we were getting were doubling. So right now, we are pulling in about 500,000 unique visitors daily. So what we implemented was a soft paywall system. So the strategy was Malaysiakini provides content in 4 languages. So for Tamil and Bahasa Malaysia, it's free. So for English content, there is a soft paywall. About half the content is locked under paywall. And the same goes for our Chinese content as well. So we think that this Frankenstein paywall model was, it helped us to bring in traffic. At the same time, we force who we think to be the higher net worth readers to pay and subsidize the non-paying readers. So that is something that you might want to explore, having a mixed paywall model. The thing is, one thing that we realized about subscription is that oppressive governments are good for business. So people will feel that there is a need to keep good journalism going, and that is the value proposition that we are giving to Malaysians. So part of the problem is retaining these subscribers. Is something that we've been grappling with for 16 years, and we still haven't found a solution yet. And one problem that we are facing now, and I would like to share with you guys, and we don't have a solution for it yet, is what happens if the oppressive government disappears? The party has not stopped yet. We are still maintaining respectable subscriber figures, but it's falling. If you want a solution or whether we have succeeded in doing this, you have to ask me again in 2 years. It's something that we are working on. So another value proposition that we give to our subscribers is that we have a premium feature which is allowing our subscribers to leave comments on stories. So only paid subscribers are allowed to leave comments. And what we do is we curate what we think is the best comments, and we will republish it. We'll sort it according to topics, and we'll republish it later. So it's kind of like a letter to the readers. But because of the nature of how it is being published initially, where readers get to interact with each other, so it's not exactly a letter to the editor. So what value that they're getting out of this is, I think, bragging rights, that the editors think that my comment, my opinion is good enough for them to spend their time to fix my grammar and typing errors and publish it prominently every morning. So that is one feature that we have. Every morning, we will highlight what we think is the best comments from our readers. And sometimes, we call this article Your Say, where we curate all the best comments. Sometimes Your Say articles tend to be the most read material for the day. So it will be more read, more shared than some of the articles that we put many hours into. Our income streams up until 2017 was half of it came from subscriptions. The other half came from, a huge chunk of it came from network advertising, Google, Outbrain, and a little bit from Facebook instant articles. And the rest of it came from events, grants, and our training sessions. For this year, our events team has brought in a lot more revenue. So I'm not sure what the subscription portion will be like by the end of the year, but it's definitely going to be less than half. So what kind of events do we do? The most recent one is we were approached by Parliament to help them host a debate for young people in Parliament. So we were the promotional and organizing arm. And the type of value that we're giving back to our subscribers is to say, hey, you guys like democracy and good governance, and we're going to try to instill that among the youth. And we broadcasted it live to through our YouTube channels and Facebook channels. And some of the good comments that we got from our subscribers was that these kids debate way better than the actual members of parliament. So it is a lot of events that we do. We try to tie it in with our core mission, which is human rights, democracy, and a little bit of politics. One other unique feature that we had recently, 4 years ago, was that we ran a crowdfunding campaign in order to finance the acquisition of a new headquarters. So we called it a buy a brick campaign. So what we did was we told people to buy a brick for approximately 250 euros. And what we offered them was we will laser etch your whatever message you want on the brick, and we'll build a wall within the compounds of the new building. And we managed to collect, again, roughly 250,000 euros. And we built a wall. I don't have a picture of it, I'm sorry. And it is mostly individuals who bought those bricks. They were a handful of corporations, but it was mostly individuals. So we tried to give them the idea of you owning a part of this space, which includes a space that could be rented out. It has a small stage, audio equipment, so that people could host forums or use it for community activities. And we will also offer services like live streaming for cheap. I'm not used to talking in front of journalists, so I'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, offline is getting more and more important, I think. Yeah, do you want to change place, perhaps, with Emily? Makes it a bit easier.
Is this what is the other one?
No, that was Emily's, sorry. Just a second.
Well, hi everybody. I am Milagros Salazar Herrera. I am a Peruvian journalist, the director of Convoca. Convoca is a digital media outlet of investigative journalism. Convoca has a mixed business model. We receive grants. We provide digital service, and we make workshops, conferences, and also crowdfunding campaigns. And I would like to talk about our lessons of the last crowdfunding campaign. Because in order to support our a network that we have, we lead a network of 20 journalists from 15 countries. The name of this network is Investigate Lavallato. Lavallato is one of the case, the most important case of corruption in Latin America, because Brazilian companies paid bribes to president, ministers, politicians, and we create this network to cover this case of corruption. So we decided to make this, to launch it this year, a campaign, a crowdfunding campaign. Well, it was so difficult because what is the context of Latin America? Crowdfunding campaign represent under the 10% of incomes of the digital media. For example, Animal Político is a digital media from Mexico, and they have 1 million followers in Twitter, but they raised just $3,000, imagine. And it's very, very difficult. So I can share some lessons about this experience of this campaign. Here, yes. So I think we think that it's important to set a clear goal. Let your audience know what they should believe in and support your organization. And also, it's very, very important evaluate the political context. your audience is living in. Because, for example, people are in Peru, is Lavallato is a case of corruption that divides people because some of citizens support the work of investigative journalists and prosecutor that they are investigating these facts of corruption, but other group of citizens, they don't support this work because many politicians are involved in this case. So I think it's one lesson important for us was that we need to prepare a plan in case of attacks, for example, in case of fake news campaign. I think it's very, very important. Be transparent, like you say, about how the organization is spending resources. Stay on top of your campaign, create a marketing plan. If you don't have money to hire a marketing, a digital agency or a consultants or a specialist in this kind of campaign, you need to create this plan with your team and to think about how it works. Give your readers clear benefits. For example, we offer workshops to how investigate corruption because many people want to know how journalists investigate this kind of topic. For example, like give an ebook about our investigations. Also, don't forget to and show your audience how your team works. No, it's very important because some people, it's incredible, but when I read in social media, some people think that it make investigative journalists, if you access, for example, to some documents, you just publish the document and you don't verify these facts. It's incredible, and you have to explain explain how you do that, no? How you work with this document, and don't forget to thank your audience for their contribution. It's very important. And I think it's important to say some things you should avoid doing. Not having clear who is your target audience is. For example, for us, we thought that it was an opportunity to make this campaign because we wanted some members of this network can be ambassadors. For example, a journalist from Colombia, from Mexico, different the members of our network. And we thought that it was a great strategy to increase the incomes of the campaign, but well, it's not was a great idea. Well, we can talk about why, but well, other point is that putting off war is terrible. Do that. Be careful. Not establishing clear roles and responsibility, not keeping your word. If you say that you're going to invest the money in that kind of investigation, you have to do that. It's very, very important. And not having a back plan, for example, in case of attacks or something like that. That's it. Thank you.
In time. Thank you. We don't have that much time, and I want to give the voice to the audience very fast, but just one question, because most of you mentioned transparency, how that transparency regarding budget especially is important, not only, but also regarding budget is important for your work. On a scale from 1 to 10, how important is it for membership models to be transparent on budget, while 10 is the most important? What would you say, Alon?
It's kind of hard to put a figure on it because I think it really varies by member. So I think for most, I mean, we put our accounts online, and I think most members and most readers don't really care as long as we make a statement that we're not getting funding from particular sources which are of concern, might be of concern to them. But then we have some highly engaged members who do really want to go through with a fine tooth comb, like through absolutely every line in our accounts. So sorry, but I can't put an exact figure on it. Basically, if you segment your audience and your membership, then I think that might be a better way of like putting a figure to it.
But is it maybe just the opportunity that you can do it? Actually,
I think demonstrating kind of that you're forthcoming with information is definitely valued. And we've on a different subject but somewhat related, we found that, for instance, when a couple of times when we have made mistakes in our journalism, and we've published a lengthy explanation of how the mistake was made, is actually somewhat frustratingly, but also beneficially, had more traction online than the original article, but not in like a troll type way, but in like a way of members saying thank you for being open and transparent about this, and that garners more trust.
Interesting, thanks. Milagros?
Well, I think that for organization of investigative journalism, it's very important to be transparency, because all the time we say that transparency is very important for politicians, for many people that we investigate. So we need to demonstrate that we are transparency, and also to keep your word about if you are going to invest in any investigation. You promise that you are going to invest the money in one investigation. You have to keep your word and do that. I think it's very important.
Andrew?
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10. Transparency is very important because it saves you from lawsuits. And I come from a third world country where fake news is very, very overwhelming. So in terms of budgeting, all our grants is it's transparently listed down on the website. So everybody knows where the money is coming from and what projects that they are used for. Yeah.
I would also encourage you, Malaysiakini on its site has an excellent statement about how the way that it's funded helps allow for editorial freedom, and I think it's a great reference point. I agree with Milagros completely that at a moment when we're being accused of producing fake news, I think being transparent is an antidote to that accusation. And frankly, it models what we want to see, the way that we want to see more of our institutions operate. Also, when we are purposefully opaque, it makes it seem like we have something to hide. And I think that can invite sort of skepticism, even when it's unwarranted. Another thing, I think that organizational health and transparency, organizational financial health, is only one type of transparency mode that you might employ. So there's a lot of others. Things like showing the people involved, including their motivations for being part of your organization, their demographics. I think that's one thing that more organizations are keen to see. What is the diversity of your staff, whether that is racially or in their own backgrounds and beats. Your editorial priorities and agenda, your processes, your product and service pricing. Why does your subscription cost what it does? Responses to criticism, and also your organizational philosophy and culture. I've been really impressed by organizations that on a given date every month or every year open up their newsroom and say, come and sit in on our pitch meeting. Hear how it is that we make decisions about what we feature above the fold or on our front page. And then we want to hear from you about what's on your mind and your sources of frustration or confusion.
Thank you.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
I think that this is just my personal view. I don't represent my organization in saying this, but certain information about your finances, I wouldn't make it public if it puts me in a strategic disadvantage. Like if the online news industry in Malaysia is very competitive, so each time a new organization springs up, I can roughly tell how much their editorial team costs, how much it costs for them a month to operate. So I'm not going to reveal certain things like what my network advertising sources are giving me, because I wouldn't want my competitors to know.
Yeah, thank you. Now it's your turn. Your questions, yeah.
How can you reach out to audiences who are not on social media when you, for example, start crowdfunding and you want to inform them about your investigative team? Because advertisement on social media is the cheapest way, and that's what we all do, but I think it's also a good way to approach maybe elderly audience who used to read paper and would support it, and I don't know how to reach them.
Who wants to answer? Andrew?
One thing that we like to do was, a long time ago, was to organize roadshows, forums. Malaysia is a small country, so we could afford to do that, to speak in a couple of big cities, to get people to debate current affair issues. And we'll put up our buntings, and we'll set up a subscription desk. You know, even if we just get 10 sales, it's a win for us.
But in what context, like at university, where did you go, for example, with those shows?
We weren't allowed in universities last time, so we would just rent a public hall, and we would get our local contacts, usually grassroots groups. We'll work with, say, a local association, and they would tell their members, and yeah, towns are pretty small, word gets around. My advice is to just do whatever people like to do, just go there.
More comments? Yeah.
A few other possibilities that I would add. A limited paid marketing budget, I'm not talking millions of dollars, but strategic paid media acquisition to advertise yourself, we have seen perform really well when it is not just a broad distribution, but a really targeted, you have a hypothesis that you want to test about growth audiences. Partnerships and list swaps, when they are undertaken ethically, I think can be a great way to introduce your work to new audiences. For targeting or reaching readers, viewers, and listeners in rural areas, we've actually seen a lot of success with posts, like advertising through the post, whether that is postcards or other sort of mailers, especially if they're tied with some kind of free festival. There's nothing like an opportunity of putting your live journalism on stage for people to experience it and to have some sort of affiliation with your brand.
We also we have partnerships with 2 local radio stations, so we give them free advertising in our print edition for a regular radio slot, where one of our journalists, we just rotate it every fortnight between the 2 stations, and one of our journalists talks about an upcoming story or something they've been working on. So that's like tapping into audiences that don't necessarily come to us naturally. And with our events as well, we've been really keen, almost a bit too keen perhaps in the past, to stay away from university halls and conference centers and just go to obscure places in communities that don't necessarily bring many people, but you can get quite deep engagement. So we've been in churches, in pubs, in industrial areas. So it's kind of, it's not necessarily just about scale in our opinion, but it's about who you're reaching out to and what value they might bring to your reporting.
Thank you. More questions? Yeah. Rachel.
Do you think there's a limited market
of membership? I mean, is there a certain number of people in this world that were prepared to give money to media and we will reach, you know, peak membership at some point soon?
I think there absolutely is a saturation point. I mean, there's a finite number of humans on this planet, and they have a finite number of resources. This is where I become really fascinated by, and maybe you'll think I'm naive here, but the idea of individuals also paying in participation. So getting really creative about how is it that you might strengthen your journalism, if not through individual contributions of funding, through things like having people come and, you know, help staff your newsroom in some way that is useful in exchange for unlocking the full benefits of membership. You know, subscription and membership sort of scarcity, I think, is something to really be cognizant of, as more organizations than ever in the world's history are now pursuing the same kinds of funding. I also wonder if it isn't worth saying to your donors and to paying members, you know, maybe there is a way that you actually, by going above and beyond what our base rate is, you actually can offer gift subscriptions, student memberships, and the like, so that more people can enjoy access to this work, even if they're not the ones to foot the bill.
I think that we have experienced a saturation point 4 or 5 times in our 20-year history. So we had to develop new revenue streams and new markets. We came up with something called the institutional package, which allowed 20 different IPs to log in at once. So this was popular among government agencies, law firms, universities, but not all of them continue on with the subscription. Some may be one-off, some 2 years, 3 years. But I think the finance ministry has been a pretty good customer, but I don't think everybody is going to be that lucky. Does that answer your question?
Okay, one more question? Okay.
Hi, I was just wondering, I read an article a few days ago about charities who suffer problems because people used to donate to a charity and do it for the rest of their lives. And now the old people are dying, so they're pulling out. And there's not enough young people who want to dedicate money to a good cause for the rest of their lives. And I was wondering, do you experience the same thing? On average, how long does somebody is a member, and is it fluctuating all the time, or do you have a good, solid core?
I would say I know less about lifetime sort of affiliation and commitment. But anecdotally, I can tell you that it's not just news that is experiencing that. As you say, it's also opera, theater, so many other institutions. And this may be a place where it's well worth talking to some of those organizations in your own communities, because they've gotten really creative with their programming as a result. Like, if we can't just depend on an audience that is aging out, what ways can we be getting our work to new audiences? And it requires some flexibility and some creativity. To sort of flip your question a little bit, I also would think about the time it takes from first encounter with your work to first donation or membership sign-on. Because I know at places like National Public Radio in the United States, it can sometimes be, this data is a little bit old, but for a long time it was 7 years between first listen to a broadcast and first donation. That is I don't mean to be the scary person from the stage sort of giving you these doom and gloom figures, but just to accurately set expectations, that is a lot of repeatedly introducing yourself, showing that your work is of high quality, demonstrating how it is that you undertake your work, what it means to be verified, what it means to check your facts. Because that time period, I think many of us think of this work as, oh, it's crowdfunding, and so people need to give by X date or they won't have a chance to contribute. We really need to reframe that expectation that you may not see the organic uptick in donations, in subscription and membership that you're hoping to, unless you have real reason, some real sense of urgency. I can't remember which of my co-panelists mentioned this, but also thinking very seriously about churn and retention. I think a lot of organizations launch with some offer that is really strong and compelling. And then all of a sudden they find that when it's time to renew, they have not put the care and the craft into maintaining that paid user base, such that it becomes a really easy thing to cancel when it comes time to renew. And
it's not sustainable as a model.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
More comments on that? No? Okay. We have to quit here because we're running out of time, but I'm quite sure that the speakers will be here the next hours, days, and you will have the opportunity to ask them questions. And I want to thank you and you for being here and for these very fascinating insights. I think non-profit journalism just begun, and we will hear a lot of about this topic here at the conference and on many more conferences. Thank you.
Thank you.